Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Brian Laundrie's parents are slammed with a lawsuit by the family of Gabby Petito, the bombshell allegations made in the court documents. And Evan Rachel Wood speaks out for the first time about alleged abuse at the hands of Marilyn Manson.
I am very confident that I have the truth on my side.
Plus, an Ohio officer is cleared in the death of Ma'Khia Bryant. But first, a suspect linked to multiple murders in Washington, D.C. and New York City.
We're talking about two individuals that are homeless, the most vulnerable population in the city right now.
We're live with the latest developments. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Police believe a serial killer is on the loose in New York City. They have the photo, just not his name. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with the details. Anjanette?
Brian, the heads of the NYPD and the Washington, D.C. Metro Police say that these shootings and killings are definitely connected and that they started in Washington on March 3rd. Over the weekend, police in New York City released surveillance images of a shooter targeting two men as they slept on the street in Lower Manhattan. One man in New York was shot in the arm and survived. A second died. Two of the three victims in Washington, D.C. survived. Police in both cities say the MO is the same, and that is why they believe all five incidents are connected to the same person.
The case is a clear and horrific, intentional act of taking the life of someone that appears because he was homeless. Two individuals were shot while sleeping on the streets.
Now, rewards are being offered. They range anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 for information that leads to an arrest and conviction of the shooter. Brian?
Jeanette. Joining us today is legal analyst Matthew Mangino and Terry Austin as we break down the string of homeless shootings. Matthew, with there being cases in D.C. and New York City, are we looking at state and federal charges? If so, what?
Well, typically, Brian, when you look at a homicide or an aggravated assault, that's usually something that is the bailiwick, so to speak, of the state courts, and those would be state prosecutions. Now, if you can have some nexus between these killings and interstate commerce or some sort of interstate criminal activity, then the United States attorney might be able to come in and prosecute these cases as federal prosecutions. But normally when we look at something like homicide and we look at something like aggravated assault, those are cases that are typically the responsibility of the state courts and local prosecutors.
Yeah, I can see the Fed saying, hey, you traveled state lines with this intent to do this horrible act, so maybe that's how they catch him on that. Terry, what is it going to take to find this guy? What do you think the investigation will entail?
Well, listen, if we have both federal and local authorities, we will have an abundance of resources. But even just from a local perspective, we know that the authorities are going to be looking at those surveillance cameras. In New York City, we have millions of cameras around the city, and I'm certain DC does as well. The authorities are also going to try to talk to eyewitnesses. There might have been someone who saw what was going on at the time, maybe another homeless person, maybe someone who was out on the street at that time in the neighborhood. And they're going to look at social media. Perhaps this individual said something on social media, maybe bragging about what was going on. So they're going to look everywhere they possibly can to find out who did this.
All right, so Anjanette, Terry said state and federal help on this case. So let's focus on the federal. How's the federal law enforcement assisting with the investigation?
Well, Brian, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, better known as the ATF, is assisting with the investigation, and they're doing that by using NIBIN. That's the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. There is information that is collected about guns and shell casings. That information is analyzed, uploaded to the system, and then they're able to compare that information from the shell casings found at these scenes to data in that system to determine maybe, just maybe, where that gun has been and who owns it.
All right, this investigation is going to be ongoing, and of course, as we get updates, we'll make sure to bring them to you here on Law and Crime Daily. Also in New York, a man is accused of stabbing multiple employees at the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art after his membership was revoked. Take a look at this video. People say Gary Cabana stabbed 2 people when he was denied entry. The victims, a 24-year-old man and woman, were working behind the counter when officials say Cabana jumped over and stabbed both of them. Both victims are in stable condition after being taken to the hospital for treatment. Cabana recounted the incident on social media, claiming he never caused a disturbance and instead accused the museum of framing him. Cabana claims he has never been escorted out of the museum and was blindsided when he received the letter stating his membership was revoked. After the incident, the NYPD held a news conference explaining what happened.
An individual entered the museum, attempted to gain entrance, presenting his membership card, and was denied entrance because his membership had expired. His membership had expired as a result of 2 incidents involving disorderly conduct here at the museum on 2 separate dates in recent days. He became upset about not being allowed entrance and then jumped over the reception desk and proceeded to attack and stab 2 employees of the museum multiple times. Those employees were stabbed in the back, in the collarbone, in the back of the neck, and were rushed within minutes to Bellevue Hospital, where they received immediate care. We are told that they're both going to be okay.
As of Monday, Cabana has not been arrested. His last known place of residence was a nonprofit shelter for the homeless and mentally ill. A spokesperson for the museum said the MoMA will be open again to the public on Tuesday. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, singer Marilyn Manson files a defamation lawsuit as actress Evan Rachel Wood doubles down on abuse allegations. But first, the death of Ma'Khia Bryant. What decision a grand jury makes for the Columbus, Ohio police officer involved in the shooting.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. An Ohio police officer will not be charged nearly a year after the shooting death of 16-year-old black girl Ma'Khia Bryant. This comes as a grand jury determines Columbus, Ohio officer Nicholas Reardon should not be indicted in Bryant's death. Officials say Reardon shot and killed Bryant on April 20th of last year, the same day ex-cop Derek Chauvin was convicted in the death of George Floyd. The divisive case made national headlines after Bryant's death. Body camera footage shows Reardon shot Bryant as she swung a knife at another woman just seconds after pushing a second woman to the ground. An autopsy later revealed Bryant was shot 4 times. Reardon says he responded to a 911 call at Bryant's foster home where someone was threatening to stab other family members. Last week, special prosecutors announced Reardon would not face charges, citing that under Ohio law, deadly force is justified when there's a threat of death or serious injury to the officer or someone else. In a statement, Bryant's family said in part, quote, "There should have been other non-deadly options available to deal with this situation." Back to break down the no charges in the fatal shooting is legal analyst Matthew Mangino and Terry Austin. Terry, what do you think of the prosecution's reason for no charges? Do you think this should have gone to trial for the jury to decide, or was this the right choice?
You know what, Brian? That is an excellent question. In my opinion, the jury really could have decided this because, as you mentioned, Ohio law does allow for deadly force if you reasonably believe that the person posed an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. And he did believe that. So I think that was the decision that the authorities made based on the facts that they saw. But it is such a close call. And in this instance, I think that the family deserved to have a jury determine that. So I think that maybe it should have gone to that jury and that the prosecution shouldn't have closed that off.
Now, Matthew, judicial decisions affect policing. So how will this affect police interactions in the future for Ohio?
Well, I mean, I think here, the prosecutors, they brought in special prosecutors, so they were independent. They brought it to a grand jury. A grand jury made a decision, a recommendation not to file charges. I think what this gets down to really is, well, we see a lot of officer-involved shootings. We also have to recognize that in the last couple of years, that police officers have been shot and killed in the line of duty at numbers that are increasing each year. And we need to build trust in the community. And that has to come from an open dialogue between police and community members. We're literally at war, it seems, on the streets of many of our cities across the country. And we have to open a dialogue to try to find solutions to these problems that are resulting in deaths to civilians and deaths to police officers as well.
Yeah. Well, interesting the development in this case. There's nothing much after this as there are no charges. So we'll see if anything changes or maybe any policies as this story continues. Thank you both. And in Tennessee, the second person charged in the death of an NBA player, Lorenzen Wright, is headed to trial. Jury selection began Monday in the case of accused killer Billy Ray Turner. Lorenzen Wright, a former standout player at the University of Memphis who went on to play for several teams in the NBA, was killed in July 2010. His body was found after his mother reported him missing. Wright had been shot 5 times and left in a wooded area near his mother's house. Police had few leads for 7 years after the murder. Then in 2017, investigators arrested Billy Ray Turner after the gun used to kill Wright was found in a Mississippi lake. Police linked Turner to Wright's ex-girlfriend, Shara. Turner and Shara reportedly had a relationship and attended church together. Prosecutors led Shara recruited Turner to kill Wright for his life insurance payout. Shara was also charged in Wright's death, but took a plea deal and pled guilty to facilitation of murder last fall. She is serving a 30-year sentence. It isn't clear if she will be called as a witness over the next 2 weeks for Turner's trial, as opening statements are set to begin this week. In total, 15 jurors will be chosen, narrowed down from the more than 80 people who were called to serve. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, the families of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie are headed to court as a new lawsuit is filed. Plus, Evan Rachel Wood speaks out for the first time since naming singer Marilyn Manson as her alleged abuser. What she says about his defamation lawsuit ahead. Welcome back. We're hearing for the first time from actress Evan Rachel Wood as she describes the alleged abuse she suffered at the hands of her ex-fiancé, singer Marilyn Manson. The allegations date back to the early 2000s when Wood said she was physically, emotionally, and sexually abused by Manson, whose real name is Brian Wagner. She came forward with the allegations back in 2018, testifying before lawmakers about the abuse, including that she was raped, cut, and forced to drink Manson's blood. She publicly named Manson as her abuser just last year. Last month, he filed a lawsuit against Wood claiming defamation, citing the allegations were made under false pretenses, including a hoax letter from the FBI to convince other women to come forward with sexual abuse accusations. Wood spoke about the allegations and abuse on ABC's Good Morning America.
At the time, you did not name the person who you said had abused you. Why?
I was too scared. It was made very clear to me that there would be retaliation, and to expose a person in power and who is as high profile as he is clearly is a huge undertaking. From what I can tell, he's alluding to the fact that maybe this was just kinky sex. Brian and I did not have a BDSM relationship. We did not have kinky sex. This is not a sexual preference. That's not what we're talking about here.
Wood has not taken legal action against Manson, but actress Esme Bianco and Manson's former assistant have both sued him based on sexual abuse allegations. Legal analyst Matthew Mangino and co-host Terry Austin are back as we discuss the latest filings against Marilyn Manson. Terry, Manson is countersuing for defamation, among other things. What damages is he looking for, and what does he have to do to prove his claims?
Well, he's suing primarily for that defamation claim, but also intentional infliction of emotional distress, which is one of my favorite causes of action because it basically can include almost anything. And the suit is against not just Wood, but Ashley Gore, who was working with Wood, and they were trying to pass legislation for abuse victims. So he sued both of them. He's going to have to prove that they made false statements and that that was intentional on their part. It was knowingly made. And he's going to have to prove damages to his reputation. That's going to be difficult because we know other people have accused him of similar actions. So he's already got a damaged reputation. For the infliction of emotional distress, he's going to have to show that he has damages for that as well. So he's got a long way to go.
So let's talk about one of those cases. Matthew, Ashley Walters, that's Manson's assistant, is suing for sexual assault, battery, and harassment. But she said these memories were repressed until a therapy session in 2020. Does that create any legal hurdles for her?
Well, I think it creates potential credibility hurdles for her. There's no question that there's scientific evidence out there that repressed memories can in fact be triggered and come back and can result in prosecutions or successful civil lawsuits. But here, Brian Warner, Marilyn Manson, his worst enemy may be himself because he's bragged about this bad girl's room, the rape room, and other things like that. And those things, his own words, may be his worst enemy in these suits. And the repressed memory may have an impact, but I think it could be enough to carry the day.
Yeah, especially because there's multiple alleged victims in this case, all kind of saying the same thing. We'll see how this and other cases play out from here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll make sure to give you those updates. Also in celebrity legal news, the defense attorneys for actor Jussie Smollett file an emergency motion to pause his sentence and grant bond. This comes less than 1 week after Smollett was sentenced to 150 days in jail to be served at Chicago's infamous Cook County Jail. Along with time behind bars, Smollett was also sentenced to 30 months felony probation, $120,000 in restitution, and $25,000 fine after an Illinois jury found him guilty of reporting a false hate crime back in 2019. At last Thursday's sentencing, Smollett loudly professed to Judge James Lynn he was not suicidal. The following day, Smollett's attorneys filed an emergency injunction saying Smollett is the target of online threats and is in danger of physical harm. When we come back, the family of Gabby Petito points the finger at Brian Laundrie's parents, why they say Laundrie's parents knew about Gabby Petito's death before she was reported missing. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. The AR-15 rifle Kyle Rittenhouse used to shoot 3 people has been destroyed by the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. This comes just 4 months after Rittenhouse was acquitted on all counts in connection to the Kenosha, Wisconsin riots of August 2020. Law and Crime Daily brought you gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial where Rittenhouse was charged in the shooting deaths of Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and injury of Gage Grokowskis. As Rittenhouse was 17 years old at the time of the shooting, friend Dominic Black purchased the weapon for him. In an interview earlier this year, Rittenhouse's attorney, Mark Richards, explained why his client wanted the weapon destroyed.
Can you explain why Kyle Rittenhouse was so insistent about destroying or having that gun destroyed? What was his reasoning?
Because there was dual claims to the gun, and we did not want the gun being returned to Dominic Black and then having him sell it as Kyle Rittenhouse's gun, like has happened in other famous cases. We didn't think anybody should profit from it, and we wanted it destroyed.
And the family of Gabby Petito now claims Brian Laundrie's parents knew their daughter was murdered and were working to help him leave the country. This as Petito's parents slammed Chris and Roberto Laundrie with a civil lawsuit. The lawsuit says Laundrie told his parents about Petito's murder in late August of last year and that they later helped conceal his location before he went missing. Gabby Petito made national headlines last fall after she was reported missing in early September. Her family told officials she had been on a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. Petito's body was later found in Grand Teton National Park. Her cause of death was ruled to be strangulation. After a weeks-long manhunt, Laundrie's remains were discovered in a Florida reserve. Authorities determined he died by suicide. Along with his remains, investigators found a written confession where Laundrie admitted to killing Petito. According to court documents, Petito's parents are now seeking more than $30,000 in damages from the Laundrie family. Matthew, this seems a little confusing. If the Petito family has information that the Laundrie knew Gabby was murdered, shouldn't we also be seeing criminal charges too?
Well, that's a good question. This civil suit alleges in the complaint that the Laundrie family refused to talk with the police and talk with the Petito family, after their son came home. So by its very allegations, it's suggesting that they weren't giving any misleading information. They weren't lying. They just were refusing to talk to him. And I think in this civil suit, they have a duty to prove that there was some responsibility on the part of the Laundries to divulge information about their son or turn over information about his whereabouts. He was a person of interest for the most part while this was going on. So they're going to have a tough time showing that responsibility with regard to their conduct. And then with regard to criminal charges, unless they can show maybe that they were trying to get their son out of the country, the Laundries are trying to get their son out of the country before his suicide, that might lead to some prosecution.
Terry, quickly about the civil case, how strong is that? Is that an actual claim they can make?
Yeah, actually, let me just add, while I always agree with Matthew, I think here they have a claim and they could prove it because there was mental suffering.
All right, we'll see how it plays out then. Well, thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. Always appreciate it. And we'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.